if I know that I have to pay these people and I have $1 million home and I got taxes and in order for me to keep driving my Porsche, okay, then I have to turn it over.
Right.
Yep.
So what I'm going to be willing to do is I'm going to be willing to sacrifice certain things so that I could keep the finances coming in.
Right.
Yeah.
So, it's like,
Four claps, and we're started. We are live, episode 6. I'm losing count here. Of the Lamplight sessions. Nate's still here from the last episode.
I'm here.
Unless we release them out of order. Yuzhal's still on the screen. A lot of people are wondering, why, if Yuzhal's going to be on, is he not going to be on? Is he gonna be on? People are wondering, are literally tens of fans.
That's what keeps the fans coming.
Keeps the fans coming.
Everybody's trying to figure out.
what keeps the
Yes.
fans coming
Yeah.
is you drinking that cup.
The delicious,
Beautiful
agua.
I got a problem here. I ain't
Lamplight
got nothing in my
podcast
cup.
Yeah,
This is a
so just pretend you have
disaster.
something.
This is a disaster.
Yeah.
A whole
Hey,
disaster.
this is great water we get right now. Right, Yuzhal?
I would assume so.
Our guest. Your name, where you come from.
No one, nowhere.
And that's how we start. And no one comes from nowhere.
Yes. Some people come from nowhere. Anyway, so I don't know.
You don't know who you are.
I'm just saying, it's like I'm being interviewed. Like, there's no prep work. I didn't get to talk to anybody. You're backstage. Like, hey, just say this, talk about yourself. No, it's like, hey, lights, camera,
Boom.
Here we are. If you don't know your life story, who does?
Well, what is my life story? Okay, DeValle Hayes, and
Sharif.
grew up in Brooklyn, Coney Island.
Coney Island.
I don't know. I don't know where to begin. Because there's so many different things that take place in life. Like some things are interesting, some things are not interesting.
Right.
For the most.
What was it like growing up? Like if
'cause we
you
find-
grew up Coney Island,
Right.
what type of neighborhood was it? What type of
It's not an island like Hawaii.
no?
Well, like I'm trying to tell you that's difficult. Because I grew up from being born and then 11 years old. So from conception to 11, I lived in a different community. I lived amongst Puerto Ricans, blacks, whites, and it was a smorgasbord of culture. Which technically people could call it the ghetto, but to me it wasn't a ghetto. It wasn't like that. When I was growing up in Coney Island, and then at age 11, I moved, and where I moved with Jews and Italians. So it's like one culture to another culture.
Yeah.
And, so my parents never distinguished, black and white to me, so I grew up just thinking that you're just lighter than me. That's all. I'm darker and so forth and so on.
Right.
So it's like, we always had, when I was living in the ghetto, my next door neighbor was Jewish. Mm-hmm. My best friend was a white guy. When I moved to the new area, which is like Sheepshead Bay, I still had best friends as white guys, but then I was going to church, so I had black people who were friends on Sunday.
All right.
So it's like you hang out with these types of people during the week, you hang out with these types of people on the weekend. So that's why it's like, it's like how can you start? Because you have different cultures. You grow up here. You have these people, and that's how you are until you graduate high school. It wasn't that way with me. It was always a mixture. It was always various different people coming in and out of my life. It's different cultures, different music. These guys like rock. These people like hip hop. These guys listen to Eagles. These guys listen to AC/DC. So it's always a difference, a broad. It wasn't like just cut and dry. And you find out different people like different things. Different people eat different things. They cook different ways. So I grew up eating kosher pork, It's impossible to kosher pork, but I grew up eating kosher pork chops. My mother koshered her pork chops.
Wow.
So I mean,
So nobody's ever really asked you about how you came up, or like you've never like had a conversation about like what it was like growing up, where you were growing up and all that. Really?
What was your childhood like?
My childhood, I don't know. I was a different kind of kid.
Let's talk about that.
When I was growing up, I spent a lot of time in my room.
Mm-hmm.
My brother was born when I was 6. So prior to my brother being born, I spent a lot of time in my room drawing comic books and things like that. I didn't go outside much because I didn't, I think the first time I went outside with my mom to go somewhere, I saw monkey bars and I jumped on the monkey bars and swung on the monkey bars and bust my head open. So it's like I got stitches up there,
Right.
So it's like, okay, you're not going to mess around with those things anymore. So it's like, I think what it is really is like because it wasn't something that was presented to me, it's not something that I had a desire for.
Right.
I was perfectly content being in a room, drawing comic books or making up comic books or playing with my toys and different things like that. Until my brother was born. And when my brother was born, then it was like, okay, I'm going to go outside, but I'm going to go back in because I want to make sure my brother's going to take his nap. So I'd go and put my brother to bed, for him to take his nap, and I'd fall asleep with him. So we both wound up taking naps.
Right.
And so, it wasn't until I probably was like 9 or 10 that I actually started making more friends where I was outside more,
Gotcha.
But, for the most part, it's like I've always been content with just being inside in my room, focused on something that was exciting to me,
Do you feel like that might have damaged, your social skills and dynamics?
No. I'll say no. And the reason that I'll say no is because when I got older in my teenage years, I noticed there's things that occurred that didn't occur. So when I was 11, I believe it was, now this is me going to church. So I go to church and I meet a friend. So his friend is the engineer at the church. So I'm going to go spend the weekend over my new church guy's friend's house. He lives in Long Island. So in the process of me going over there, I go to the church. I have to wait for his dad to prepare to get ready to take me to the house. Well, all the musicians, they start bringing in all this equipment. So I don't know what the stuff is. It's like boxes of equipment, drum machines, and I didn't know what those things were. So literally they start bringing the stuff in and they start setting it up. So I'm laying on a pew, kind of like bored, sleeping, looking up at the sky, whatever. And they bring in this drum machine and these crazy looking synthesizers. So I would get up and I walk over and I'm looking at them like, man, what does that do? So one of the guys says, hit that button. So I hit the button and it makes a drum sound. I'm like, whoa. And they start laughing like, no, go ahead, hit it again. So I hit it again. It's like, go ahead, hit all the buttons, just hit all the buttons. So, I start hitting the buttons. It's like, wow, this is cool. This is so cool.
Lift your mic up a little bit. Yeah.
All right, so I have my introduction to drum machines and synthesizers at age 11.
Right.
So I go back and I sit back down and I'm like, man, this is exciting. What are you guys doing? And they say, hey, we're gonna record. So literally I sat there at age 11 and watched these musicians produce a song, record the music. The singer came out and sung a song. They took me up into the booth with the mixing board and let me hear it back as they mixed and produced this song.
Wow.
I'm 11.
Right.
That night, I just sat back and I said, I know what I want to do for the rest of my life.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And the great thing about it is that no one prevented me from touching the instrument or playing the instrument. They welcomed me to play the instrument. You know, if I had been the type of child who was out ripping, running, so forth, and doing this, then my temperament would have been different.
Right, you wouldn't have been.
So they would not have been willing for me to touch everything, because I probably would have walked over and just started touching it without asking their permission.
Right.
But I just walked over and looked at everything, and they noticed that. Mm-hmm. So needless to say, that was when I was 11. By the time I turned 18, the person who let me play the instruments was now a Grammy-winning music producer. And he heard a demo tape that I did, because I was into I want to do music. I didn't know what it was called. That's what I want to do. So by the time I graduated high school, I had 2 drum machines, 3 keyboards, and a 4-track. My English teacher, I was in a special English class, and he said, your assignment is to do anything that you want, but you have to do it from start to finish, and you have to present a project. Mm-hmm. So my project was a gospel album.
Wow.
So when I did the artwork and everything, presented him with the gospel album, and he said, did you do all of that? I said, yeah. He came back, he listened to it, he came back to me, he said, you got an A+. That was awesome. I never had training. No one showed me how to play a keyboard. No one showed me how to play drum machines. Other than that, you know, it's just basically just getting the instrument and spending the time to find out what it did.
Right.
So now I graduate high school. I'm 19. And the person who let me play the drum machine when I was 11, who's now a Grammy nominated producer, here's about a tape that I...
Are we just going to know him as the person, or are you
I know who he is, but I'm going to wait
his
for
name.
you.
Of course you do, but they don't.
Hey, I'm trying to have some secrecy building up to the big thing. You know what I'm saying? Bada bing, bada.
You're building it up. I appreciate that.
So this person who's now worked with multiple, you know, very talented people, here's a demo tape that I did, and says, hey, I want you to come out to my recording studio. I'm like, wow, okay. Man, he's interested in what I'm doing. I'm like, okay. So 1 week comes up. He says, hey, I want you to come out. I go to his house, takes me down in the basement, and he has like wall to wall, like SSL, you know, it wasn't an SSL, it was a soundtrack board. Like literally I could put a blanket and a pillow and lay on it, and that could be a bed. That's how big this thing was. Buttons everywhere. Yeah. S1000, S950 samplers, mini Moogs, a whole wall full of like just lights and all kinds of things. And I'm like, wow. So he comes in and he says, let me show you how things work. And one by one, he goes through each device and points and says, it goes here. That, he plays it, it goes here. He shows me everything in the room and he leaves. He left me in the room. So I'm just sitting there like, okay, what am I supposed to do? So then he comes back in, he said, you're not doing nothing? I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do. He says, man, just do what you want to do. Do you need me to help you with anything? I said, no. He says, all right, have fun. Knock yourself out. 2 days I spent in the room. Literally, I had done so much music, played around and done so much stuff that I was like, okay, where is he? Mm-hmm. So I go, I'm like, the house is all quiet. So I go upstairs. He's knocked out, sleeping. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to wake him up. I go back down. And eventually he comes down and he listens to the stuff that we did. He's like, you just did all of that? I said, yeah. He says, I want to play you something. So he now plays me a song. He says, that beat that you did? Yeah. I want to add your beat to that track right there. I'm like, for real? He's like, yeah. And he starts doing what he's doing. And I'm sitting there like, wow. Holy moly. That song actually wound up being a remix on Motown for Malira. I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
Okay. His name is Lawrence Holland. All right. He produced a lot of Mariah Carey's Christmas albums. He's worked with Lauryn Hill, Anthony Hamilton, Celine Dion. I mean, some pretty big names, right. You know. And he is a master musician, you know. So when I think about musicians and playing keyboards and things like that, he literally can write a cantata in strings, symphonies, instruments, the whole nine, and then turn around and produce a song for Janet Jackson.
Right.
So that's what a producer is. A producer is, it brings out who the artist is. It just doesn't, well, this is me. You should be glad to be on one of my beats. No, a producer
actually works with
the artist to bring out who that artist is. It makes the artist shine because it's not about the producer, it's about the artist.
Right.
That's what he taught me. You know, to this day, he and I still work. We actually just released a new track called Clouds. Nice. Inspirational, different things like that. We've constantly always worked together, off and on. We've done commercials together, jingles together, and he is the one person that is still in my life hard from when I was a teenager. You know, so I'm grateful for him for taking the time to say, hey, get off that drum machine.
Right.
You know, so that, it's like, I think everything that occurred in my life, it occurred for a specific reason to make me who I'm supposed to be. I don't even know if I'm that person yet, you know, but, and it's like I said, me being in my room and drawing, you know, that led to me being in my room and writing movie scripts.
Right.
You know, and there's a movie script, well, there's a treatment for a movie script that I wrote when I was in the 5th grade. No, I wrote my first script when I was in the 5th grade. When I was 18, I think I was 18. No, I was a little older than that. I think I was about 21. I wrote a script for a treatment. And at that particular point in time, I was dealing with some people up at MCA Records for a publishing deal. And it was handwritten. I had drew the cover of what it was, the title, everything was there. And I said, well, this guy, he believes in me enough, he's going to give me a publishing deal. Let me give him this script, see what he thinks about it. I give him the script. Now he's not accepting any of my phone calls anymore. Oh, yeah, we had a meeting and I don't think we're going to go through with the publishing situation. Oh, okay. I totally forgot that I gave him the script. A couple of years later, a movie comes out. I'm not paying attention. Me and all my boys, we go to the movies. We all can't wait for this movie to come out because we heard so much about it. We watch the movie. I'm sitting there, I'm oblivious. I'm not paying attention. It wasn't until the movie actually came out on video and I went and I rented it and I watched the movie by myself.
So that would be the second time.
That's the second time I watched it. There's no distractions. Mm-hmm. Just me watching the movie. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Why does that seem so familiar? So I'm watching. I'm like, okay, let me fast forward to this. I want to see the credits. Who wrote this and who's behind this film? Fast forward it. MCA, certain individuals' names. And I just sit back and I'm like, wow. No wonder I didn't get the deal.
Right.
Now, I'm not going to mention any names because, you know.
Does that occur a lot, though?
It occurs in the industry all the time.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It occurs in the industry. You know, I mean, there's certain writers and directors who are creative, you know, but the fact is that I'm no one, and I'm just speaking my opinion, okay? Hollywood is not a creative place, okay? It's based off of me taking an advantage of someone who has creativity but doesn't have the resources to get where they need to go.
This is actually very interesting because that's what people are actually really talking about lately. Is actually, and it's a little bit more of what it's about money. Yeah. And so it's like they're not really into the art of filmmaking anymore. They're into selling toys, basically. So it's like, people talk about actors aren't really actors. It's just these who can get in shape the best. And then there's what is big. And so it's like, okay, all these films, when people sit down, a lot of people, not, you don't want to be snob or whatever, but a lot of people sit down, they look like, okay, this is just trying to make something that's hyped and just get money off of it. Yeah. You're not sitting here trying to write a great story. You're not sitting here trying to make a really cool thing. You're just going, okay. So that's why they keep revitalizing and remaking successes and go, okay, well, if we can ride on this train here that's already going, instead of coming with something new and investing and putting in work, we can just remake this movie that already succeeded and then make money off of that. Yeah. And so it's just no work, more money.
I mean, what we have in society is everything is fast food.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You know, because if I had a production company and I was one who was really more about expressing my creativity, then it's going to take me a longer time to produce a product that's going to represent who I am.
Right.
Right. But if I know that I have to pay these people and I have $1 million home and I got taxes and and in order for me to keep driving my Porsche, okay, then I have to turn it over.
Right.
Yep.
So what I'm going to be willing to do is I'm going to be willing to sacrifice certain things so that I could keep the finances coming in.
Right.
Yeah.
So, it's like if all you made was $50,000 a year, right? You'd live your life off of $50,000 a year.
Right.
But when you make $1 million a year, living off of $50,000 a year is like, I couldn't do that. No, you could do that, but your vanity of what you're trying to live like because your other producer friend is living in $1 million. So it's like everybody wants to what's the word I'm looking for? Everybody
kind of like quick money.
Yeah, but conformity.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to conform to what is supposedly popular. You could take it, you can look at it in the film industry, you can look at it in the music industry, you can look at practically in any industry. I mean, how many times have you driven on a highway and saw a car drive by and said, oh, that's a so-and-so. Wait a minute. No, that's a so-and-so because they look just alike.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right? So who's copying off of who?
Right.
And why is it that, I think the time that I spent in my room allowed me to be able to be comfortable with my ability to be creative.
So this, I really want to get into this. This is very interesting because one year I was listening to you, I was drawing a lot of correlations to myself because everything's about me. But, because I was thinking, and that part
in your mind,
because part of that was there's there's so many places I want to go. That part there, when I was thinking, because that's something I've said about myself, which is, but before I get into actually, my first thought was when you were talking earlier, you were talking about writing all this stuff at this early age, and I was thinking like, what is that thing? Because for myself, like I was doing the same thing, something similar, very early, and it's like I don't want to be like, there's two kinds of people, my friend. There's two kinds of people, right? You have consumers and you have creators, and so there's people that are just perfectly comfortable just watching, but like I was never comfortable. So like I would watch like stuff, and sometimes like some of the stuff would be almost like just I would like copy the character off of the show basically, and just like a character looked just like him because I thought it was cool. But I would watch stuff, and then it would just like I would have like the urge to create that instead of just going, okay, like I would be writing. So like I would have all these different like, okay, I was into westerns or I was into this and that. I would write all kinds of little short stories about this hero, this guy or whatever, or the secret agent or whatever. And I had to write stuff. I couldn't just watch it. I had to go and write my own stories. It's like a drive and a push. And then what you were saying there is something I've said about myself a lot, which is that, when I was younger, I didn't really like, I didn't have, one, we're not in this time, we have the phone and all that, right? I didn't have a lot of toys. My parents didn't buy me a lot of toys. And my dad, like, my parents didn't really spend a lot of time with me. Like we were around, but it's like when we went home, they'd just be on their computer and they'd be on the TV. And so I would have to entertain myself. And so I learned how to entertain myself. I learned how to develop imagination. I learned how to write stories and tell stories to myself. To the point that people started thinking I'm crazy when I got older. Like, I see you walking down the road and you're talking to yourself. But I learned to write stories by writing stories to entertain myself and to be myself. But I also learned to be comfortable with that. And not, everyone else that needed like a group of people to give them, So it's like now I'm perfectly comfortable going home and working on something, and I don't need to go out like some people my age feel the urge, like I got to be around people. I got to hang out with my friends.
Exactly.
But I also feel comfortable creating things, and I also feel like you start to build a gauge of like what's fire and what's whatever, and you don't have that just like that. Because you're gonna have awkwardness at first. There's the awkwardness when you first start dealing with things. Like when I first started dealing with films, and it's like just I thought you put crosses. Everything has a dissolve. I didn't. It's like I learned something. It was funny. The simplest things. Like it was like always cut in action.
Right.
And you don't realize until you get years in of working how much what that really means
Really
and how
matters.
important that is. And it's like, okay, and I didn't realize that it was always cuts. I thought so. It's like everything just needs to fade. And you just need like a still shot, and then you start to learn. You sort of compare yourself and go, okay, so you need different angles, you need close-ups, you need to consider lighting, all of these things.
Right.
But what do you think that is what it is, and what creates that drive to create and to make that makes a person a creator and not just a consumer?
Well, before you say that, I know that there was a saying by a guy named Pablo Picasso, yeah. And he said, good artists borrow material, great artists steal material. Okay. And this is something that's permeated through so many different arenas and genres of entertainment and fashion and all of these different things. So that point is a valid point, that you asked them, because what makes the difference? Like, why is, today you have people who are, considered monsters in their field, huge monster, and very creative individuals, but
when you say monsters, meaning just a huge force in that arena, not
just
necessarily,
like a huge, and
not
everybody,
necessarily a negative connotation.
And when
monster.
not monsters in the sense of like,
villain,
dangerous or
evil,
but very powerful. When they walk in the room, everybody knows that they walked into the room. So it's how the system is built. And it doesn't really provide for. It doesn't give the incentive for creativity.
I like the fact that you use the term system, because that's kind of what it is. I remember when the movie Matrix came out, and I watched the movie Matrix. Now, being from Brooklyn and growing up, the time period that I grew up, kung fu movies no one was outside between 1:30, 1 o'clock, and 5 o'clock.
Was safe.
Streets was safe. Because everyone was inside watching the kung fu movies. You had Channel 11, which played the lesser known kung fu movies, but then you had Channel 5, which played, the Shaw Brothers movies. So you figure there's a whole rap culture that came from kung fu movies. Wu-Tang Clan. So when I watched Matrix, I was drawn in, number one, by the visual effects. Secondly, I was drawn in because of the way that the cinematography was. Yeah. Now, I didn't recognize at that point that that's why that movie was something to me. So it's like the cinematography, the effects, the fact that it was based off of, martial arts or whatever. The lingo, I didn't understand any of the lingo. It's what the movie told me, what the movie was saying to me that I didn't realize until probably 4 years later, when I went back to watch my most liked movie, which is, I'm just watching Matrix. And I watched Matrix. And the crazy thing about it is that this last time that I watched Matrix, I watched the entire movie by myself.
Again.
By the time I'm just squirting all over the mic. By the time I got to the end of the movie, I was crying. Because irregardless of what they said, who I am as a person and who I strive to be as a person, the movie spoke to me at the end, because when he held up his hand and he finally understood that he did actually have a sort of power. Right. Okay. And when he held up his hand and he's like, no, and he stopped the bullets, the tear rolled down. And when the tear rolled down, it said, basically, it was telling me, you have the ability, if you believe in yourself, to do anything. Mm-hmm. But the world is so noisy. Right. We have cell phones. The kids these days, what future do the children these days have when every time you turn around, this is what they are? Right. They're on here. And the thing about it is, they're learning language. They're learning how to communicate in small sentences. Mm-hmm. Like, and the way they even communicate is intelligent. But there's a psychopathic thing behind what they're doing, because it's like, there's one particular, because I work with children, and this guy, he's a nice, quiet guy. But as soon as the singlest thing occurs to get him a little off, his language changes. He becomes this very, very educational person. Like, he starts using big words and saying this and saying this. But the underlying factor is that I will stab you and I will kill you.
Wow.
You know, so I'm like, okay, as long as his buttons are not pressed, he's tolerable, he's cool. And you can have a conversation with him. But as soon as his button is pressed, there's something that goes off in his brain to whereas like it's dealing with him is now dealing with like, it's like you're literally on TikTok.
Right.
You know, and it's like, do they not recognize that that's what's taking place? So like you said, you asked a question, you know, you said it's about, you know, the consumer and the creator. People are programmed to be consumers. The creators are not going to share their creativity.
Right.
Right. And you said that, you know, what the guy said that.
Yeah, Pablo Picasso.
Say it again.
He said a good artist borrows material.
Right.
A great artist steals material.
Okay. That is a matter of opinion.
Right.
Right? Because the reason that the artist is great is because they paid to be great. Right? Because on the radio right now, if you go and you listen to the music that's on the radio, right? That's like the number one hit songs or whatever like that, you will find out that a lot of times someone put money behind them to be in that position.
Right.
Right? Because you have a lot of great songs, great material, but it's not
on the radio.
Why isn't it not on the radio? Because there's no money behind it.
Right.
So, yeah, a good artist, right? You know, he's the one way, but a great artist is, but you really can't tell. I'm gonna publish a magazine and tell you this guy's a great artist.
Right.
And because you're being programmed to be a follower,
exactly,
you're gonna accept the fact that this guy's a great artist.
Right.
Or this guy's great. But he's not great. In fact, the greatest people you've never heard and you've never seen their work.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So, you know, it's like
how do we break out of that? Because that kind of plays on the herd mentality and kind of instinctual things. You know, like similar to, you know, animals that live in herds in Africa, where it's like if they see the herd move, it's like we got to move. Mm-hmm. There's safety in numbers and all these things, and it plays on where it's like, okay, you know, and in a lot of ways it is fair because like if you're looking around you and like, everyone's running, it's probably wise to run. It's probably wise to run, and it plays on that. And so it's like everyone around you is consuming something. It's like, okay, generally if everyone around you likes it, it's probably really fire, right? Generally, and so it kind of plays on, and it plays on that kind of mentality to keep us all becoming programmers. Not becoming programmers, programmed to be consumers, becoming programmers. My brain. Programmed to be consumers. How do you break out of that?
change the programming.
By how?
Explain. Producing a different type of program. You know, if I had the ability to produce a movie or produce a song, right? What that is a message, right? Now, if I just look at it as a means of making money, then I'm going to only produce what I think is going to make money.
Right.
But if I'm really about my art and my message, then I'm going to spend more time and I'm going to produce what is going to present my message. And I'm willing that everybody's not going to get it right away.
Right.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to produce this message. I'm going to find another platform. I'm going to produce the same message. I'm going to change it a little bit, and I'm going to go this way. You know, so, you know, right now, what we understand because of social media is that everyone creates a brand. Okay, you got to create a brand. That's nothing new.
Right.
It's nothing new.
No, it's not.
It's just that because anyone can go and buy a phone and get on TikTok or get on Instagram, now that's the big thing. So I'm going to create my brand. You know, well, if you really take a look at it, I mean, I understood this a long time ago because they said, which one do you like, Burger King or McDonald's? And I'm like, you know that they all taste the same. Like McDonald's just uses a special sauce. If you was to take the burger and put them side by side, okay, Burger King's Whopper, the meat is a little bit bigger, but it still tastes the same. It's literally, okay, flame broiled. What makes it flame broiled? It's because of what they put on it. The meat is still the same. It's just the flavor is just a little bit different.
So I understand your example, but that's an arguable statement.
Hey, listen. Everybody entitled to their own opinion.
Yes,
right?
yes.
But at the same time,
the point.
Maybe Canadian
and I agree
Burger
with
King
the point.
and Canadian McDonald's are different.
there's people. I mean, literally, there's people who can disagree, and the fact is not like, well, I disagree, and you're totally wrong. The fact is like, you know what? Go buy a McDonald's burger and go buy a Whopper and put them together, and just smell them, right? Like where I work, okay, I cook food, right? I cook. I go into the kitchen, I chop up vegetables, I take vegetables and so forth. I think about ingredients. Like when this goes in your mouth, how is this flavor gonna work with this flavor? So I think about things when I'm cooking. You have some people, they just go in the kitchen and they take stuff and they throw it in a pan, and they just cook it. That's it. And then they tend to feel like, well, people don't eat my food. Case in point, there's a person that I work with. He makes chicken. He makes chicken on the grill. And they're like, man, we love chicken. We love stuff on the grill. Fine. Months down the line now everyone's coming clean. Like, yeah, we really don't like his chicken. I thought y'all said you liked grilled chicken. Yeah, but he doesn't season his food.
Right, it's chicken
but wait
on
a
the
second.
grill.
It's chicken on the grill. Y'all said y'all like chicken on the grill. So you technically don't like chicken on the grill. You want your food seasoned. Right. So it's really, people are not even taught to really express what they really mean.
Exactly, yeah.
So I think that is such a great point, and I would like to step in.
Hey, step in,
please, if you would allow me, because going back to the topic of music, and how it's really just an assembly line of everybody just kind of like doing the same thing, right? But would you say that the ones who put or invest more of themselves into their music or into their whatever their expression is wind up rising to the top, whereas those who are in it just for the short term, like for instance, they might have been like, well, we like our chicken on the grill, but it was just for that small moment in time until they realized, yeah, but there's no real depth to this, though. There's no real, it was just a change of the norm, possibly, and they took it like, well, this is what I like, and this is what I want, and because from what I can see with society is, as long as it's just like product placement, you throw something over there 1 second, people see it, then it's like for some reason. I'm craving. I feel like I can't get enough of Pepsi or whatever it is. Yeah. I mean, what do you think about that?
Not sponsored by Pepsi.
That basically those who invest themselves into their art, since we're talking about art, those who invest themselves and really spend time, I would say have longevity. Potentially. Whereas the ones that are just in there to make a quick, just flash in the pan, that's what occurs to them. They're in and they're out.
I think it's not quite that simple. And the reason that I say it's not quite that simple is because what you consider to be success is not necessarily what I consider to be success. So when we look at the success as far as in media, as far as like, okay, top 10 records, as far as, okay, number one selling artist, so forth and so on, there's professional people behind that individual that make that individual who that individual is. And the reason that I say that is because there are people that I liked when I was growing up. I liked their music. Like I really, really dug their music. Like, man, this is great stuff. Other people didn't like it, didn't care for it. So to give you an example, when I was around 13 or 14, I was listening to anything that Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis put out. Anything. Even if it was an artist that no one knew about. If I read the back of the album, that cassette, and I saw Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, I bought that record. I bought that, right? everyone else in my circle, they were buying the stuff that everybody else was buying.
Right.
I'm listening to different music because that's what I like.
Yeah.
Because again, when I'm by myself, I can be true to myself.
Right.
I don't have to worry about anyone else's opinion or what anyone else thinks. So I can go in my room, and if I want to sit in there and I want to play Janet Jackson's Let's Wait a While and I want to put that on repeat, I will play it and take the time to rewind it because I want to hear it again.
Right. And
Right.
you want to hear what made it
And I want to
sound,
hear,
why it sounds how it sounds.
Why is it that I like that song?
Right.
Okay. Now, let's look at Janet Jackson. And then under the same umbrella of Janet Jackson is an artist named Sherelle. Janet Jackson is Janet Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Sherelle is Sherelle. I think Sherelle had much more better songs on her albums. Multiple songs on her albums that were better than Janet Jackson. But Janet Jackson is Janet Jackson.
Right.
And Let's Wait a While blew away Sherelle's whole album to the masses. But to me, I like Janet Jackson, loved her stuff, listened to her stuff. But when I wanted to chill out, I put in Sherelle.
Right.
You know, so again, it's marketing. Marketing is programming.
Right. But also, I mean, sometimes people aren't really comfortable liking things and being themselves. You know, people aren't comfortable in their mentality. But we need to take a quick break. You know, my girlfriend wanted me to choose between her and my career as a news reporter. I've got some breaking news for her. All right, we're back. I had to change some batteries and other technical difficulties. What I was addressing there, just really quickly, my thoughts as what you were talking about is, you know, we're at a time specifically like now, numbers equal validity. It's like if you look at YouTube, people will just look at like how many views, how many subscribers. If you don't have this certain amount, it's like you could be an expert. Yeah. You could be 100% be an expert. If you don't have several thousand, 100,000, a million views, you're just, you have 1,000 views on your channel. Nobody cares. You're not important. You can't possibly be an expert.
Right.
Because numbers and what other people, and so like, because we really do fall into that pack mentality, the herd mentality, but it's just like, well, if other people don't like them, there must be a reason.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And then that gets manufactured. If you see in the news media where they go, people are shouting out against this guy. And it goes, okay, realistically, it's only one or two people who are vocal, but now they paint as more people. Yeah. So when they paint as more people get on that bandwagon. And they go, well, if other people think he's racist or he's stupid or he's sexist or he's this or whatever, if other people think he's bad, then he must be bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we really, with the onset of technology, has really amplified that.
Yeah, it has.
Because really, like you're talking about your circle, you know, but now, you know what I'm saying, your circle can be all kinds of craziness because you can talk to anybody everywhere. You know, when at a time when it's just like people around you you're living with and you know, and maybe you lived with them before and they moved to another state or moved to another city or moved to another place. Now you can be talking to people you've never met before and they can be in your circle. And in their area environment, because your environment still does affect you and influence you, can then affect you and your tastes.
Yeah, your environment does. I mean, it does. But again, you know, the world is so noisy. And I think that the really pertaining to the whole music thing, internet, so forth and so on, you know, you want to do a YouTube channel, right? But who cares? I mean, realistically, who cares?
Right.
There's millions of people who have a YouTube channel.
Yep.
What do you got why should I watch your YouTube channel? If you don't have any lights, you don't have any girls twerking, you know, you don't have the things, because my attention span is so short that when I'm scrolling and I see your video, you better have something on there that's going to get my attention, like clickbait or whatever, to get me to go look at your channel. And then if you don't say something to keep my attention in the first 10 seconds, I'm off. Mm-hmm. So that commercial is never going to populate so you can make money, because I'm not staying on your YouTube site long enough. You know, and that's the thing about it is like, YouTube has algorithms, for certain things. And if you're going to do a YouTube channel, then you have to do research to figure out, okay, how can I get the best algorithms? How can I get people to my site? Like, you got a YouTube page. You don't do any promotion. You don't do any marketing. Who knows you have a YouTube page?
Exactly.
If you do a record, you produce a record, put a record out there, you got Timbaland on it. But if nobody knows that Timbaland produced your record and you don't have any financial money behind you to do marketing promotion,
it's gonna
no one knows you got a record and no one cares.
Right.
You go and you spend $1 million on a movie, or it's a low budget. You spend $1 million on a movie, you get it out there, you put it on Tubi. Tubi's free.
Yeah.
Nobody knows you have a movie on Tubi.
Right.
I got a movie on Tubi. So what? No one knows and no one cares.
Right.
I mean, literally, you're living in a society that no one knows and really no one cares because the what's being promoted is I'm worrying about me.
Mm-hmm. So
everything is being promoted to be selfish, but it's done in a way that people think like it's okay to be that way. So it's like, forget loving my neighbor as myself. It's like he has something that I like and I want that. So I'm going to take it from him.
Right.
That's why all these rappers are dying. And one of the things I ask, and some people would disagree, but my thing is like, if you're a rapper and you don't live in that city, why flash your gold in a city that you're not even a part in?
Right.
Right. Don't go there flashing your stuff like, hey, I'm the man, because somebody else in that city is the man. You're not even from there. Right. If you're going to go there and be humble, or go there with your security. Or go send your security to get you a McDonald's or a Whopper. Don't go there with your girlfriend or with your children or your son in another man's town that we're not thinking, because we think that we're somebody, and it's like, really, and that's why I say I grew up different. I grew up, it was okay for me to be alone. Mm-hmm. I didn't have this telling me that I needed a friend like this or this like this. I grew up with a television in my room. My mom didn't have to come in my room and tell me turn the TV off and go to bed. So there's a different mentality. I can literally say there's just a different spirit in the world right now based off of technology. Yeah. And the technology is not merciful and compassionate. It's not long suffering. It's not about us coming together as a family or so forth. It's about getting a quick fix. Yeah. Like the whole world is on drugs and don't even know it.
Oh yeah,
you're right.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely.
So and that's a whole nother conversation, right? That's a whole new. We might table that for another whole podcast.
Yeah,
but how much different is that really from the way it's always been though? Because now it's just that we have these alternative forms, but it's like 100 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, it was still a racket. It was like you couldn't yourself go and post on YouTube, but it was still the same way where it's like, okay, it was still about money. You just had to know the people to get in. If you had to give them a reason to sell you, right? You had to sell to them how you would make them money, and that's where you hear all these things like, oh well, that's show business.
I still think it boils down to the world is too noisy. With technology, the world is too noisy. Okay, there's too much to be distracted by. If we go back to the 40s, right? Was there television in the 40s? Yeah. Right? There wasn't YouTube, there wasn't cell phones, right? What did you have? You had black and white TVs. Did everybody have one? No. A couple of people did. But television wasn't the motivating factor behind people wearing clothes.
Right.
Now television is used to promote, hey, wear those skinny jeans, right. Wear that tight shirt, wear that, whatever. So it's like television tells you how to dress. And right. Like you said, cattle. We're cattle because we don't have minds of our own. And why don't we have minds of our own? Because we never spent the time with ourselves to develop that mind of our own. Okay.
So enumerate, I don't know if that's the right word, a little bit, how you've seen the music, specifically music industry, change with the change of technology. Some of the things the examples of how it's changed with the onset of technology that you've seen.
That's when I established, dude, this is a group of all musicians at a table, so that's nice.
So when I was learning how or what is that I wanted to do as far as a musician, I don't consider myself a musician. I just make music. However, I have to do it. Mm-hmm. Right. So I can do it with a guitar, I can do it with a bass, or I can do it with electronic instruments. So when I was growing up and I was listening to like Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis or whatever like that, one of the things that I did is I paid attention to who was successful in a specific genre. And it got to a point that I didn't like rap music. Like I didn't want to hear it. So for a year, there was at least a year, I listened to nothing but soft rock. I didn't listen to any hip hop, any occasionally here and there, a little R&B song or whatever. And I remember when I actually did turn back and listen to an R&B song, it was like, wow. And I remember thinking in my mind, man, that's pretty cool. But it's like, I still want to hear the other music. Mm-hmm. And I think I realized at that point, the reason that I liked hearing the other music is because it was based off of like a simple chord.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's a simple chord, there's simple strums in the background, and this person just sings. And what he's singing is pleasant to my ears. Mm-hmm. Not taking anything away from rap or whatever like that, but rap was more of like them yelling at me. Mm-hmm. And it was an aggressive in certain instances. Now, there was some rap that was, I remember Hawaiian Sophie, mm-hmm. which was like, Jay-Z or whatever when he first, and I didn't, I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't into it, but when I heard that kind of changed my mind. I'm like, wow, if I could hear some more like that. But again, you're talking to a person who doesn't go hanging out with kids on the street.
Right.
You're talking to somebody who's totally comfortable with being in a house.
And discovering on his own. And
discovering things on my own. So it's like, I'm not allowing myself to be programmed by what I'm hearing.
Right.
Right. So what I would do is I would listen as I got older and people actually started taking notice that, man, you do beats. Oh, that's great. So it's like, oh wow. Somebody other than my mom and my dad like my music.
Right.
So I started paying attention. And what I started noticing is that this producer, everything that he produced was number one. Mm-hmm. Irregardless of whether the artist was an old artist or a new artist. This guy produced it. It was on the radio. This guy comes out, he does something. It's on the radio. You mentioned someone, India Arie. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, during the course of time, because I liked India Arie, during the course of India Arie's album coming out.
So if I could kind of like let everybody know what we said a little bit off camera, was that for me, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier on in the conversation, which is when an artist is able to like find themselves and find their groove, even though they might not be initially as they might not pop off as quickly as certain other artists. Mm-hmm. Their growth is more gradual, but it's more long standing, and it has more more longevity to it. Right. And so what I found with India Arie was that, to me personally, I didn't like her music. Okay. Even though I was into the neo soul, and I can mention another name that I know you didn't like, but I was crazy about, and we'll talk about that later. Mm-hmm. But to me, she didn't find her pocket. To me, she seemed uncomfortable. And there was a number of things that she did later on that proved that she was uncomfortable to me. Mm-hmm. And so that's, and I feel, when I think about that type, that situation there, I feel like she didn't get to where she potentially could have, because to me, she never found herself. She never really found herself.
I can agree with that. But again, I did artist development for like 10 years.
Oh, that's a key term. That's a key term, artist development. Which really you should have said it way earlier in the, not that you should have, but because that's a huge part. But anyway, so go ahead.
All right, so All right, so I did artist development for like 10 years. So I worked with a lot of different groups. And what would take place is that a manager would speak with my manager and say, hey, we think this group has potential, but we need to get them with a producer. They need to get into a studio. They need to get into the studio. You know,
really, Meg, you can just move the arm.
Okay. So that's what would take place. I would get with the managers would talk. We would get together. They would introduce me to the artist. I would meet the artist, and the first thing I would try to do is figure out who they were as artists. But what I found out is most artists don't know who they are as artists.
Right.
Exactly.
They just know that, okay, well, he can sing, she can rap. She can sing, he can rap. Oh, well, we all got together because we can do all these things and we're just so great together. Well, when you put them in the studio, you find out that they don't even mesh. So what occurs is that if a manager has put money behind them, they don't want to hear that they can't sing.
Right.
Like there's an issue with them in a group together. You're going to have to figure out a way, right? So not to say that this is the case with India.Arie, but India.Arie there's more roots to her, right? But during that time that India.Arie's album came out, MCA was throwing every black artist there was out. So if you like, Jill Scott had an album that I literally picked up her album and read her information a year before she even got played on the radio. And when she got played on the radio, I'm like, wait a minute, isn't that the person that I didn't buy her album? Mm-hmm. This is a year later, you know, so what you have is you have the record labels want to make money. And there's a partner of mine who I'm doing some stuff with right now. And he told me, he said, Groove, we got to do like they did back in the old school with like Def Jams. We guys get a whole bunch of artists and throw them. And whichever one sticks on the wall, that's the one we keep. That is literally a business model that people will follow at a certain time. Yeah. Right. So India.Arie is not that she wasn't a successful artist, because it's just that her records didn't sell. But she was touring. And that's really where the artists make their money, is the touring. But consumers, we only account success to what we see when it's being promoted to us.
Okay, so if I can jump in, because I find it very, very interesting that you mentioned Jill Scott, because I felt
Did
the
I say
same
her name?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
You did. I felt the same way about Jill Scott.
Yeah.
I felt the same way. And it's probably exactly what you're talking about. I think that it potentially they weren't even given the opportunity to really come into themselves, because the record company was like, throwing them out the nest when they haven't even really got all their wings yet, type of thing.
Yeah. I mean, you look at certain artists. I mean, we can use music and the way things are in the music business and practically describe how life is going, right? Because, okay, music is like a universal language. Everybody can speak through music, So when you listen to what the young people listen to right now, what you have is a cry, right? Because they think it's depressing in certain ways, and they talk about drugs and suicide and heartbreak and so forth and so on, which they're so young, they probably haven't really even experienced true heartbreak, because they probably haven't really even been really in love, because they're only 16 or 17. So, back in the days, we used to call that puppy, boy, you're a puppy. That's just puppy love,
right.
So and so we have the teens in the music that they listen to. But then let's go back 25 years and you have the hip hop that was back then in those days. It was the same thing. It was just a different mentality, because it wasn't about Molly's and popping codeine and this or what was it about?
Sipping syrup.
Sipping syrup. That was the early 2000 thing. Right. When you go back to when hip hop started, it was all about a culture. Like, go in the party, throw your hands up. Somewhere along the line,
other things came in.
Why? Because possibly they weren't accepted, or they couldn't write stuff like that, or they were gangster and they was like, well, I'm gonna write about this. So hip hop or music really is the person expressing what their life is.
Yeah.
So it's like, when I look at, actually I had a conversation with someone, and they explained to me about, the gangster rap, and how initially gangster rap started in someone's house as a joke. It was just playing. So when they like, F the police and blah, 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 whatever, it was just to have fun. But as the demo tape starts circulating or whatever like that, it seems like that became a popular thing. Like, oh yeah, what, F the police or this or that or whatever. So what you have is people hear stuff and they take it personal. They identify with it.
Exactly.
Once they identify with
to
it,
'em.
it speaks to them. So you ask the question, how can we change certain things? You change the way you promote. You change what you're promoting. Right now, it's like everyone wants to be a bad guy, right? Because being bad is promoted. Like, because the cutest girls, they want the bad guy, right? But why do they want the bad guy? Why don't they want the guy who stands up for and has values?
No, because since time immemorial, it's been James Bond, it's been Indiana Jones, it's been Rambo.
Yeah, it's been programmed.
Right.
So how can you change? How can we make it different?
Change the
Well,
program.
I mean,
Change
okay,
the
that's
programming.
interesting. Because for me, I think partly it's programming. And yes, what I'm going to say probably will fall into that. It has been programming, but I think there's also just natural things in men that women are attracted to, that they're made to be attracted to, because that's what they need, and the way men are supposed to be. That's the way men were, and men have kind of degraded, and we've turned into now we have men certain people want to blur the line between men and women, but because men they've degraded and they've become very weak.
Yeah.
And you can obviously, but on the programming, obviously, but they become very weak. So in some cases, it's not that the women are programmed to like something. It's just that
The only time they see the masculine characters is when it's coupled with negativity.
Yeah, there isn't a lot of the good guys, and that aren't like one. Yes, there's the aspect where good guys are made to look like stupid. It's like, okay, the guy who doesn't smell, he's like, it's dweeb, it's narc. Like, oh, you don't smoke weed or you don't drink or whatever. You're just like, you're a teacher's pet or whatever it is. But also because there's those certain characteristics that are there that we have a lot of men that are just they are just weak. Like masculinity has been eroded in the past 20, 30 years. And so there is just a lot of weak men, and what they see those certain characteristics in your James Bond, in your bad boys or whatever. Not that James Bond's bad boy.
I could agree with that, but I could disagree with that. And the reason I could, because again, let me go back to my childhood when I was growing up and when I was at church. Because I said, okay, I had a different group of people that I hung out with when I was home during the week. And then there's a group of people that I hung out with on the weekends, which are the church people. And we're all the same age, right? But it's different cultures. Mm-hmm. So the Jewish and Italian people that I'm hanging out with, they're out playing sports, going to the gym, going to the swimming pool, doing this, doing that. I go to the church. These guys is in church, but they're pointing out how tight the woman's dress is. So initially, when I'm not at church, I'm not looking at women that way. Mm-hmm. But now I'm going to church and I'm being fed to look at women that way. And this is when I'm a teenager. So the reason I say I can agree and the reason I say I can disagree is because I think there's always been strong men and there's always been weak men.
True, true.
But if all a woman sees is this, it's what's popular,
right? That's
what she's going to think is popular. If a man sees that this woman who has this makeup and wears these red bottom shoes is what's in, and that's what I'm going to get, then that's what I'm going to get. It goes back to the black.
Because in a lot of ways,
thing.
it's status too.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the black thing: light skin and dark skin. Right? Or I can't get with dark skinned men, or I don't like dark skinned women, or I only want women with straight. I mean, literally, right now, if you look at television, all the black women have straight hair. That is not natural because black women don't have straight hair. But then you look at the white women, and there's white women who have braids and colors in their hair, right? So it just boils down to, really, it comes down to a point of, can I accept you for who you are? Am I willing to accept you for who you are? Are you willing to accept me for who I am? Because right now, everybody's wearing a mask, and I can't accept you for who you are if I'm not accepting myself for who I am. So I'm upset with you because you didn't like my song, but really I didn't like my song. You were just at least honest enough to tell me, but I gotta blame someone because I haven't been taught to be accountable and basically say, hey, I like this and I don't like this. And it's okay for me not to like this. You know, like there's a certain period of time when I was, you know, working with a manager, and she had her assistant, you know, he's gay, right? Didn't bother me that he chose that lifestyle. Actually, the whole summer, I didn't do anything for the whole summer. The whole summer I spent at his house watching music videos and watching movies. We ate spaghetti. It never came across. It's not that I wasn't aware of his lifestyle, but it didn't bother me because he didn't try to force it on me.
Right.
But there's one particular time that he brought it to my attention. He said, Groove. He says, I noticed something. I'm like, what's that? He says, all the time you've come over here, he said, you've never once sat back on my couch. I'm like, what? He said, you never sat back on my couch. Like, you've never like sat back and just relaxed on my couch. And I was like, really? So I sat back and I'm like, you mean I've never sat like this? He said, no, you've never sat like that. And I was like, So subconsciously,
you were on guard.
I was on guard.
Yeah.
You know, even though he never came, you know, so, you know, and the thing about it is we were great friends because like I said, I spent the whole summer. They wanted me to do a record with them. They took me out to one of their bars or whatever like that. And they stood around me. But the main reason of why they took me there is because we want you to absorb the music. We want you to hear the things that nobody else is hearing because we need you to produce this type of music.
Right.
So they didn't come at me any type of way. Now, and I'm not speaking against anybody's lifestyle. If that's the lifestyle that you want to live your lifestyle, but be willing to pay the consequences. And don't push it on me. Don't make me have to accept it because I don't push my lifestyle on you.
Right.
You know, and that's the thing is like we talk about, having respect or this or that, respect me for who I am. Mm-hmm. I do respect you for who you are, but don't throw it in my face. You know, and it's like, respect that I have an opinion that I don't agree with your lifestyle, or I don't agree that you like Burger King because I like Wendy's. But I'm not going to make a big deal. I'm not going to destroy a friendship because of a personal like or dislike.
Right.
And what we have with the internet now and with social media is we have people destroying lives and friendships and relationships because of opinions, because they're going to listen to this guy tell them that this is this way or this is this way, so forth and so on. You know, so one of the things that I guess at the end of the day, I'm going to go back to it. How do we make a change? People can't do it on their own because they're already programmed to be negative.
Yeah.
So what you got to do is you got to lead these people to something so they can see a change. And then you promote it just like you promoting cookies during the Super Bowl.
Right, because we're dealing with a bunch of consumer mindset people.
Important.
And the creators are the ones that have to make the change.
The creators,
I think it's important there because that can be discouraging. It's not that people can change themselves. They can't change the system on their own. So people can change themselves. If you believe that, then there's like, even if you bring them to these things, they can't change themselves on their own. People can change themselves on their own. Obviously, they can't change the big picture. They can't. It's much more difficult. It'll be much more easier for them if we could shut down the programming because they still have to fight against that. But it's not like we can do that. It's not like we can just turn a switch off.
But I think what he's trying to say is, as creators, we can change the programming because we are the creators creating the programming.
Like right now, I'm talking to you. You're talking to me. If I say something that I can influence you in a positive way, right? Then I could possibly have created a bond because it could take weeks for this conversation to come back to you and play back to you. And then you're like, man, he said this, or, Nathaniel said that, and that makes sense. So that's what I'm saying. The programming starts with a conversation. Mm-hmm. The programming starts with, I'm going to present this, and then I'm going to wait, and let that, because do you see when you plant a seed, do you see it grow?
Takes a while.
NDIRE, these artists, they put their music out there. They're not in the limelight. They're not putting out albums. They're not doing videos any longer, but they're touring. So they're actually making money. They still have loyal fans that still follow them. And they could possibly still be actually doing albums on independent labels, but it's just not being produced, But I mean, like, out of this whole conversation, if I could bring it to ahead, what I would say is, as far as me personally, if I had the ability to do something or make an impact, I would start creating products or creating something to start planting a seed, to change the mind. Because, people are not, they have the ability to change their mind, but why should they? There's no reason for them to, because they're programmed to live and think and eat a certain way, So like I live with these boys, and you try to implement something or say, hey, you guys want to eat this? Well, what's that? Oh, it's curry chicken. Curry chicken. What in the world is curry chicken? Yeah. It's curry with what's curry? They've never experienced it because they're all from Texas and Mexico, so they've not experienced it, and they're not willing to experience it. Right? Because they're unfamiliar with it. So because of fear, people don't want to experience new things. But when you are able to experience new things, the world opens up. So my thing is like, I want to create righteousness and make it look cool. Right. Because it already looks cool to be bad. I want to create values and make it look acceptable. I want to create something where it's like woman does not feel like she has to twerk and use her body to get attention, that she could actually just sit down and be who she is and be able to have a husband or have a children, to have a life. Right now, we're being told that this is beauty, this is so forth and so on. But because the world is so noisy, no one's able to find out what they really want. Right. So we're not being true to ourselves. And then the ones that say that they are, they're only saying that because they know that talking this way is what some people want to hear, and they're going to try to make a buck from it. Right. Forget the money. Money is a root of all evil. If you take the money equation out of it and then present someone something, where we're going to go from there? That's what I'm about. I'm about, let's be saviors without trying to get paid for it.
Well, we got to close it down, sadly, but I think that's a great place to stop. Kind of what you were saying a moment ago, and Usual kind of summed up a moment ago, that as creators, I think it's great, and it's important for us, or anybody who has the ability to create, to try to, as you say, change that narrative, change that programming, change the narrative, and because if we start putting out our own narrative, we can run a new one. We can program in a better way. And I guess that leaves hope, right? That leaves hope that it's not just bad things are always going to be the cool stuff, but that maybe one day, if we all do what you're trying to do, we'll change it. Yeah. But I want to thank you guys for coming on.
Well, thank you for having us.
And we'll have you on soon again, hopefully.
Not a problem at all.
Listen, guys, we're doing great things here at the Lamplight Productions. And you can be a part of it for the low price of $0.00. Because all you got to do is subscribe. Ring the bell, ding dong, you can't go wrong. Or don't. It's a free country. Do whatever you want. Though I don't know how you can live with yourself.